I would like to welcome you on the second part of the first day of Belgrade Horizon 2020 Fair. And I would like to invite Mr. Jörg Scherer, Head of Training and Awareness Raising of the European IPR Help Desk. Please join us.
So good afternoon, everybody. So welcome to this part of the training workshop on Horizon 2020 with a specific focus on, let's say, how to write a successful proposal. I mean, you got a very first insight about the world of intellectual property and what is a patent or how to protect research results. Of course, this is going to be also an issue in my presentation, but less from a legal point of view, more from a researcher's point of view or from a business point of view, and in particular with regard to how much impact, exploitation, innovation management has to be considered when preparing a proposal for Horizon 2020. So thank you very much for inviting the IPR Help Desk to this event. I'm going to present also a little bit about what the IPR Help Desk is and how the Help Desk could be of help for you, particularly when it gets to ask for support when writing a proposal or implementing an Horizon 2020 project. So before I start, I would like to ask about your experiences with Horizon 2020. Has already somebody tried to apply for a project in Horizon 2020 or been asked, at least a few, or been asked to participate in a project? So hopefully that will come. That's the future. And I think it's a good moment in time because you may know that now Horizon 2020 enters into the last phase of the program with new calls coming up or being published now in October or November for the period of 2018 to 2020. And of course, it's a very busy period for all of us, so that's also a lot of things are going on in Brussels as well to prepare researchers and small and medium-sized companies to submit proposals. So the IPR Help Desk is a service offered by the European Commission. It's a project financed by Horizon 2020. And my name is Jörg Scherer. I'm coming from Germany. I'm working for the IPR Help Desk since many years, FP6. So at the time, so it's more than 10 years already. And also I'm the director of an innovation management consultancy, and we are pretty much involved in Horizon. So for the moment, we are the SME with most of the projects in Horizon in Germany. We're number 3 in Europe. So hopefully I can also help you with our experiences from, I think, 25 coordinations now in Horizon. So it's not from a, let's say, theoretical background. So just what do you need to know when it gets to apply successfully for Horizon? The roadmap of today, I think we'll have 1 hour and 15 minutes to address that topic. Before then, our colleagues will join in. So we have a break at about 4:30. And then our colleagues from the sector group will join in, and then we will go on with a panel meeting. The first part is the framework conditions, what you should know about, let's say, innovation, intellectual property, exploitation, dissemination. So what are the rules for participation? What are the definitions? What is the vocabulary which you have to be acquainted to? So it's really like a Bible or a must to read in order to understand all the questions which you need to address in the applications. So then, of course, I think even more important is to know how to prepare yourself. So how to prepare for meeting the requirements of evaluators and to prepare all the pieces of information in a structured way and so that it successfully passed the evaluation. And then at the end, I'm going to present a little bit about the help desk services. When we talk about Horizon 2020, we don't talk about a single project program or which is focusing on basic research or focusing on applied research or stimulating research collaboration between academics or between academics and industry. So it's a little bit of everything. It's a huge bundle of different financing programs And of course, as there are different ways to apply in Horizon 2020. The first question I think might be, or here this might be, why is it important to address intellectual property or exploitation management in Horizon? When I talk about intellectual property, just to start with that definition, I'm not talking about intellectual property rights. It's not that you say, okay, you know, in my field of technology, we usually do not apply for patents, we do not file patents. Okay, but you have IP. IP means knowledge. It's not IPR. It's not a trademark or a patent. Of course, that's another way to protect it. But when I talk about IP, it means knowledge. So, and of course, the knowledge you present is subject to evaluation because you are asked to present previous projects or to present details about your ongoing research in your institution. And of course, it's going to be evaluated by reviewers. And of course, we know that if you enter into a project, then at the end, there is not a result which might be considered to be a product or a service which is ready to use for market conditions. So it still needs more investment in research and technology development. It means that you might ask venture capitalists or other investors to invest in your ideas and your research results. And the first question an investor will ask you is, who's the owner of the results? Who's the owner of the research results? Are you entitled to develop this technology further? Are you the owner? And of course, if they have questions about ownership and it's not clear who's the owner, then it's very difficult to find any kind of investor to invest in your technology. But it's not all about pleasing the European Commission or evaluators or investors, but it's also to avoid problems. Because most of the programs in Horizon 2020 are focused on collaborative research. So you are asked to collaborate with partners from other countries, with partners from industry, from SMEs. And of course, there might be questions regarding ownership of IP, the use of IP, the further exploitation of IP. And as we have a helpline from the IP helpdesk, we see many cases from European projects in which then consortia try to solve an IP issue, which could have easily be avoided by having more awareness and knowledge about IP management from the very beginning. So that's how Horizon 2020 looks in terms of the innovation chain. So there is a place to finance basic research like in the European Research Council projects or in the Marie Curie Sklodowska projects. But of course there are more and more financing instruments which are focusing more on applied research, on research to be done with applications in the industry or on the market. And of course, any strategy to address IP management or exploitation has to be adapted according to that scale. So, and you know, there is one another scale important in Horizon 2020 is that your project has to be positioned against the so-called technology readiness level. It comes from NASA, and you will find it in the different calls for proposals that they will say, okay, what is your technology level when you start with the project, and how does it likely look when you finish with your project, and what is the development in between? So, and there are some programs in which they ask that you start with your technology or a research results on very basic level, on a proof of concept level, and then you develop them further with the help of our specifications from industry. Others you start pretty much higher on the TRL scale. We have, for example, the so-called SME instrument in Horizon 2020. Then you need to prove that you have already reached TRL 6. So it depends where you are. Do you work in the lab? Do you work with a prototype? Do you test and validate a technology under market conditions? Or is it still very basic research? And of course, you will find in Horizon 2020 specific call and topic descriptions according to that scale. And of course, the IP strategy then, of course, has to be adapted. So what are the different steps to get acquainted to this IP management and exploitation management, and then to implement it in Horizon proposals and later on in the project? First of all, and that's what we do today, is to know about the scene. What is the framework? What are the rules, the model agreements, and so on? What can be negotiated, and which is to be just taken as it is, because it is part of the general agreements when entering into Horizon 2020. And even more important is how to talk with partners about IP and exploitation strategies. We've seen many examples that when you start writing a proposal, that you talk about the research, you talk about research programs, what you do in the lab, and it comes only at the very end of the submission phase that you start talking about what might be potential users of the technology and who might be interested in it. And now, in particular now in the upcoming call for proposals in Horizon, this is something which has to be presented and explained already in the proposal. And don't leave it to the very last minute to start talking about exploitation strategies and specific routes and ideas for exploitation. So what is the framework? Just very briefly. I mean, if you get into an Horizon 2020 project, then the European Commission is signing a grant agreement with the consortium. So it's mainly with the coordinator, but then of course bound to all partners. This is not much to be negotiated. And if you would like to know how that look, there is a web portal. It's the participant portal of Horizon 2020. And there are so-called annotated grant management models, which is not only for legal people or for your people in the tech transfer, or it's also for researchers at least to have a look at once, because there are not only the core articles with the legal text, but also examples, annotation. So it explains why is it ruled as it is, and it gives you an idea how IP ownership and the share of knowledge and the transfer of knowledge in an Horizon 2020 project is to be managed. But even more important is the consortium agreement. It is mandatory. So whenever you enter into a Horizon 2020 project, in a collaborative project with other partners, then in addition to the grant agreement to be signed with the Commission, you need to sign a consortium agreement among the partners. The Commission is not part of this one. But of course, whatever you lay down in the consortium agreement might not be contradictory to the grant agreement. Of course, this is supervising the consortium agreement. And again, here, you do not start from the scratch. There are examples for that. And if your, let's say, if your institution is not so far familiar with that kind of consortium agreement, there is a website, which is the DESCA website, in which you may have a look at this kind of template, which is most frequently used in Horizon 2020. So I would say more than 90% of Horizon 2020 consortia are using the DESCA model. There are only a few cases which is driven by the interests of the industry, like automotive industry, or like the digital industry, in which the industry has developed an own template, which is more in favor of the interests of the industry. So the DESCA model, I would say, is rather balanced. So it reflects the interest of the academic partners, that they would like to use the results for further teaching, for further research, and also they get a fair compensation if they offer results to industry partners. The other ones are more driven by the interest of the industry to take the results out of the project and to exploit them by themselves. So that's the point in which you have to be very careful what you accept or not. But this is not to be ruled by the Commission, that's to be ruled in such a consortium agreement among the partners. So how does it work with ownership? You work in a consortium with 10 partners, 15 partners, you work together. However, the owner of the results is the institution who generated the results. So if you work for the university here, then the university has the ownership of the results. Of course, you have to respect internal rules, because there are internal rules at the university which lays further down what is the right of ownership for the PI, for the principal investigator, or on institutional level. That has to be settled down on institutional level. However, due to the fact that you work in a collaborative project, it is very likely that we talk about joint ownership. which means that you share the ownership with other partners involved in the project. And then you need to sign a so-called joint ownership agreement. I'm sure your TTO has such agreements, and you can also find them on the website of the IP Help Desk. There is a default clause in the consortium agreement, but I think I would advise that you have a specific ownership agreement, for example, ruling the fact if you have, for example, if you file a patent, then how to share the costs for filing a patent, or you expect revenues out of such a collaboration, so how to share them among the partners involved. Access rights. During the project implementation, that's for sure, then you share information among the partners royalty-free, so there is a free exchange of information on the meetings or in the different working groups. But as a general rule, once the project stops, then if a partner wants to use your research results for commercial exploitation, then this has to be done on the basis of a negotiation and usually under fair and favorable conditions, paying a compensation for that. So it's not that you develop results in a collaborative project and at the end an industrial partner comes and takes the results and say, I'm going to make money with it. It's very nice if you have a chance to license your knowledge to such a partner, because sometimes it's very difficult to find the right exploitation partner. But it's not that this has to be done on a royalty-free basis. I think it's very important because it's still, I know many people think that once you start working for a project financed by the European Commission, that everything is for free. That's not the case. However, there is a general obligation to exploit. When there is a chance for exploitation, then all partners are required to do it. But I would say exploitation is the wrong word, because exploitation for me has something like commercial exploitation, which is one way to exploit research results. And of course, it's a very promising one. However, as you see here in red, exploitation in terms of Horizon 2020 means also the use for further research. If you get on board of an Horizon 2020 proposal and you are asked, what are your ideas, your strategies, your measures to exploit the results, and your technology is not mature enough really to bring it to the market, however, you can write about your plans for exploitation, because you just explain how you're going to use the results for other research in other application areas or in other projects. So it's not the case that you say, okay, I'm not thinking now at the moment in commercial exploitation opportunities, that you do not think in exploitation. So I think it's very important as well to make this very clear. So that's pretty much the framework. I would just mention one thing which I think is very important, and there's a lot of discussions about it. If you enter a project, and even in a proposal, you are asked about your background. Background means your knowledge in your institution, in your lab, in your working group, prior you start with the project. And we all have knowledge, background knowledge, because you're doing different projects, you are involved in teaching, in research activities. So, and even when the project starts, there is an annex to the consortium agreement in which all the partners have to define their background in writing. And I would like to put emphasis on that this is, let's say, not a stupid, let's say, duty. It's really the chance for you to define what are fields of technology and research results, registered, protected or not. That could be knowledge for manufacturing, that could be a patent, that could be publications, which you would like to bring into a project or not. Because you have the right to exclude knowledge or to include knowledge. It's a positive list or a negative list. Why is that important? If I would be a partner in a project and you work on specific type of sensors, let's say you work on 5 type of sensors, and 2 of them are relevant for the Horizon project and 3 others are not. But it might happen that during the lifetime of the project, I, being a partner, has an interest in the other type of sensors, which you would not like to make public to me. However, if I can prove that I would have a better position to exploit my knowledge by knowing about your sensor types, then you have to provide me access to that. So that's what the Commission says needed. So otherwise, unless you have excluded it from the very beginning. So please make sure that if you have sensitive knowledge, for example, that you say in one of the sensors we work together with on an exclusive contract with an industrial partner, I'm even not entitled to bring that to the project, exclude it. So please make sure that you don't miss the chance to exclude knowledge or include knowledge according to the level of exploitation activities you would like to get in or step out in your Horizon project. So it's really, it's not a stupid legal affair, it's really strategic thinking about what is the knowledge you would like to exploit with that specific Horizon project. So from the framework then, how to define the right strategy in Horizon 2020 to be successful. So, I mean, we all know that Horizon 2020 is an impact-oriented approach. So you're a researcher, suppose, most of you are researchers, which you are driven by curiosity, you would like to do research, you have questions, you would like to get them answered. Horizon 2020 is asking for what are your results, what are your expected outcomes, what is the problem you're going to solve, what is the market you would like to get in, who's going to use your technology. There are different questions, and the mindset of researchers has to come together with the expectations from the European Commission, or in particular the evaluators. So that's the point. And it's not that you say, okay, there are 3 sections. Whenever you apply for Horizon, then there are 3 sections. One of them is focusing on excellence, which describes your research program, your publications and so on, the quality of the consortium and so on. And there is the impact section, which means who's going to use your results? What are you going to change with your results? And there is the implementation section, which means what is the structure of your project, what are your work packages and so on. That's more the technical part as well. So, and for all of the 3 sections you get 5 points. So in total you get 15 points. So they're equally balanced. So the research quality is equal to the expected impact of your project. So and most of the consortia fail in that. So even if you have the perfect scientists with very good publications and they have very good ideas, but they are not, let's say, not experienced or not trained, whatever, to write proposals in the way that they really address the impact as it was requested. So that is an issue, and for many researchers, and say, okay, this is for us very difficult to understand what they ask from me. I'm a researcher, and so that's why now the next part, I would like really to draw your attention to the point that there is this notion of impact which have to be addressed in all the different sections. So let's start with innovation. The first, because there are questions regarding what is the innovation potential of your project, of your technology. So important is for innovation, and that makes it different from invention. I think it's very important that innovation might be an invention which has the potential to produce tangible benefits. So it's satisfying some needs and wants. Not just it's something new, it's nice, but really it provides answers to needs and wants. So like the wheel is nice, that's an invention, but if you use the wheel to build up a wheel chart, then it gets into an innovation. And then what is the impact? And you can also use that for project outputs. So, and the impact says that's the maximum of, or the innovation potential, which can be improved and can be enlarged by specific measures. So the larger the benefit, that the larger is the impact. So for example, you have the wheel, which is the invention, then you have the wheel chart, and this is one kind of innovation. And if you say we can even build up a bike on it with the 2 wheels, and then it's getting even a bigger impact. And then you start developing even more products based on the wheel. So when the wheel has been done, so that's the history. So, but this is important to understand when the Commission asks about innovation, impact, and invention, that it has different kinds of meanings. And it's any kind of innovation. It does not have to be commercial. It could be new products and services, but it could also be advisory reports or reports for policy making or for specific methods for environmental protection. So most of the cases it has a commercial importance. However, that's not something which is necessarily. As here, for example, we see an example from a call for proposals in cultural sciences. So it's asking for better knowledge or materials for teaching and for education. So all of these outputs also have an impact. Also, they are not primarily focusing on financial impacts. So, one question in the proposal is about innovation potential. And do the project results which you expect from your project have the potential to deliver innovations which contribute to the expected impacts, and how much? So we have a look at that in each topic description. So if you write the proposal in Horizon 2020, then you look at the working program, and in the working program there's a specific topic. And in the topic, as we saw here, there is one part of it which says, what are the expected impacts from that topic? And the innovation potential is the part in the proposal in which you describe, so how much do you address that? And you just copy them from the work program and say, those are the expectations from the Commission, and that's the way we address them. Or we go even a step further. Innovation capacity, because nobody knows what is innovation potential, innovation capacity by heart. I'm sure. Even we do the same kind of training for the evaluators and the Commission staff, and they ask them the same question. They don't know it by themselves. So it's really, but those are now the definitions, and in the next weeks, in the upcoming weeks, also the Commission will publish a specific guide on that to make it clear to everybody what do we mean by the different terms. So again, innovation potential means how to address the impact listed in the work program, and innovation capacity means, is there any other possibility to derive impact from your research projects? For example, that you say, okay, that are the expectations listed in the document, but we have even more ideas, or we even see possibilities for further innovations in other fields of application. You could make use of it in different technology fields. So of course that's an added value. If you can provide information about the fact that you say, okay, we definitely address the innovation potential as mentioned in the call topic, but even more we see there's more capacity to make use of our results in different areas. So the innovation process is clear that any Horizon 2020 project is based on an idea, and then finally the idea is how to manage the process that it gets closer to impact, closer to market impact or other kinds of impacts. And innovation management is whatever you do to understand the needs, the wants, market-driven or societal-driven, to make use of the results. And of course, in the proposal you will be asked what are your activities and what are the structures in the consortium, and there is a place in the proposal talking about management. How do you manage this process? Is there a person which is in charge of innovation-related activities, like a representative from the industry or from an SME, or is there a board composed by academics and industrial players which are in charge of the innovation process, like if there is an IP problem, they solve it, or they are heading the working group on exploitation and so on. So you should name it, or in the consortium there should be somebody who is taking care of that. We see in many proposals that there are research organizations who are pretty much driven by innovation, like Fraunhofer or so on, and then take such a position, or we have partners from the industry doing so. So that brings us now closer to three very important terms, and they make, I would say, a substantial part of the proposal in Horizon 2020 is based on those three very important definitions. And we had a meeting last week with the Commission in Brussels, and they have and I'm quite using the slides which the Commission has very recently developed on that issue. So for the Commission, first of all, it's important to define what are results, because you are to define your expected results from your project. What are results? That could be data derived from the research, a research roadmap, policy recommendations, knowledge, educational knowledge, standards, or development of prototypes, of systems, of specific components. And of course, they are relevant for different stakeholder groups. In your case, of course, if you develop technology-oriented results, that might be the industry, to get them adapted to the manufacturing process, to production processes. But in other cases, might also be like, for example, health. There might be patient organizations or civic society. Or in other cases, there might be societal actors or people from ministries or from other kind of policymakers. So there is a huge diversity of different kind of project results which you might expect from Horizon 2020. That could be tangible or intangible output. So it could be a prototype, which of course is very tangible, but it could also be knowledge, which then is rather intangible. It could be protected by patent, or it could be soft knowledge or trade secret. That doesn't matter actually. But it has to be clearly defined. And when you write a proposal, you should mention what kind of research outputs you expect from your project. And then, is it knowledge? Is it, of course, prototypes or any other kind of technology? And you should not say, okay, we do reports and we have studies. So you should be more precise in describing the level of data you expect or level of project results you expect. And then the first thing you have to do is communication. And at the very beginning of Horizon 2020, we asked then always, what is the difference between communication and dissemination? I'm sure it's, for most of us, it's the same. It's the same. It's even misleading because in English it means more or less the same. However, in Horizon 2020, it doesn't mean the same. So you have to describe a communication strategy and you have to describe a dissemination strategy. Communication means just to present the project as such or its results to a wider public audience. So it's not specifically that you call people, say, okay, we have some results, could you make use of them? That's dissemination. But it's just to tell people that there is a project and you have a website, that's communication for sure. And you do a lot of actions just to make it public. But of course, it's not just to say it happens by itself or ad hoc. You have to set clear communication objectives. You have to say in the proposal how you are going to inform the broader public or whoever about the project. What are your means? What are your tools? How to do that? Dissemination means that you make the results, not the project as such, the results of the project public with the aim that somebody is going to use them. So in the field of technology development and in technology project, then of course that might be, for example, partners from industry. You say, okay, I would like really to raise your interest in our technologies developed in the project, and let's meet in a workshop, or we just make a demo in our lab and you come and have a look. So that's clear that you present the results to a selected audience. So you see that here now again in this table, communication is about project and results. Dissemination is specifically on the results with the aim that you enable others to use them. And also the different tools, or the tools are different. So for communication, it might be a newsletter or a website or a project fact sheet. For dissemination, it's rather on a specific scientific publication in peer-reviewed journals or a specific briefing to policymakers and so on. So it's more selected on that. And there are two different deliverables also in the proposal which you need to describe, which is the communication plan and the dissemination plan. And last but not least, even to take care of more irritation, there is exploitation. Exploitation, but is very close to dissemination. So again, dissemination was the action to inform specific people about the potential use of results, and exploitation means that you make them using the results. So it's the next step. So dissemination and exploitations are very close. And you see here also that exploitation goes a step further, not just to inform selected audiences, but also to make them using by filing a patent, starting a new company, or a joint venture, or licensing, and so on. So that's really making use of the results. So that's the relationship between communication, dissemination, and exploitation. I'm sure it's pretty much misleading to anybody who is new to Horizon 2020, but it is key to address it, because the evaluators really look at those terms as I'm presenting it today. So it's really important. So again, dissemination really means push, to make it known, to make it public to others, and to let them check what that might be of interest for them. But exploitation is really pull, to get partners attracted to your results, to get to the industry and to show them and to make them really making use of it by licensing negotiations or any other kind of activities to find the right uptakers and exploiters of your knowledge. So I think that's important to understand how those terms are related to each other. So that's an overview again here from the timetable. So you start with the project and then you communicate, because there are no results. You communicate your results, you tell people in your consortium, in your institution, in your country, or all over that there is a new project. You make a movie on it, you make a brochure on it, and then you have the first project outputs, and then you start with dissemination, and then you try to get people interested in your results. And finally, last but not least, you get partnerships for exploitation, like partners for licensing, or for joint ventures, or for startup companies. And that, of course, does not end with the end of the project, because this is really a collaboration which then will last beyond the project duration. You do not stop licensing when the project is over. So that's very important, because we see there's a lot of confusion, and I do not have to explain you about your research. You know that much better than I do. But I see this is really an area in which many consortia fail, because they are not acquainted to that terms and technologies as maybe other partners more experienced in Horizon so far. So how to gather and to find information to address to all those issues? Because you say, okay, I know how to describe my research, I know how to describe my publications, what I'm doing, I'm very clear on that. However, how should I address this communication, exploitation, dissemination stuff? First of all, again, you have to look back to the topic description. So what is there in the call topic and the work program? And again, here you see here what is the benefit and the potential benefit which is described there. So that's the starting point. You start with the call topic. And then, like here again, that's something about energy storage. It's an older one, but again, here you see here expected impacts. And then you know exactly what the evaluators will look at. This is the innovation potential. The innovation potential of your results have to meet those expected impacts. Again, innovation capacity would mean that you say, okay, we are going to meet all of those criteria. That's something we will manage with our project. But in addition to that, we see even more chance for having more impacts in related fields of technology and market-driven use. So that's the point. And don't lose the sight of the specific challenge and expected impacts, because sometimes when you start writing a proposal and then you get much more in your research and in the things that you discuss with your research partners on the preparatory meetings, always go back to the expected impacts, because that's what the evaluators will do. They will have the call topic on the left side and your proposal on the right side of the table, and they will check. So then how to find information to address all those issues? And it's not that you as a single person have to do that. So writing an Horizon proposal is teamwork. Of course, there is the coordinator, but also all the partners have to contribute with their pieces of knowledge. And we are using this scenery of a strategic intelligence landscape to say, okay, there's a lot of information available, but you have to find the right approach and the right way to get to know to all this knowledge. So there is, in your field, there is of course state of the art, which you can easily find out by doing a patent search or a bibliographic search and looking for publications in your field. That's what you do, anything, I would say, anyway you would say. But of course there are regulations, standards, norms, and of course there are market oriented information, which then of course if you have SMEs or industrial partners involved in your project, they should be responsible to deliver you that kind of knowledge. So what are market shares? What are competing technologies? What are competitors? What are future trends? Is there a trend which might bring you in a very positive situation for the exploitation of your results later? Like, for example, if you develop technologies for our society, which is getting more and more elder, for example. So there are a number of different, let's say, aspects which could help you to find relevant information to address the section on expected impact of your project results. Again, those are the sources. There might be, of course, the academic sources, industrial sources, but also policy papers. There's a lot of information given by the Commission itself, like white papers, policy papers, or minutes from stakeholder reports and meetings and so on, or in the world of the Enterprise Europe network partners, whatever. There's a lot of paperwork produced and in which you can also make a reference to when it comes to describe the potential impact of your results. Standards is an important issue. Whenever you touch standards in your technology development, then you have to make a reference to that. And there is a European initiative which is driven by CEN-CENELEC, and they have an office, a standardization office and headquarters in Brussels. And they can help you to make that decision whether your project or your proposal has a relevance to standardization issues. They even publish, usually, they will do that for the next round of calls as well, what are the calls in which they see that this is relevant for standardization activities. It might be the relevance to an existing standard, or it might be that your project could provide a substantial contribution to develop a new standard, or to get involved in some of the existing standardization bodies which are revising standards and so on. And that, of course, is an added value, and you get a lot of information there. You see here the website, and you can easily check, is my topic somehow relevant? For example, in medical technologies, or in visualization technologies, or in simulation, or whatever, there could be a reference to standards as well. And of course the Commission is also evaluating your proposal in terms of interoperability. So if you say it's nice, it's a nice solution, it's new, it's innovative, but it's not linked to existing standards, and it cannot be, it cannot operate outside your country, or it cannot operate outside your field of application, and then of course there's a limited impact, because it's really limited to other sectors of use. So standards is an issue. Patents, of course, patents is a very, very rich source of information. There is information available about 80 million patents in the different sources. And what might patents be of interest for you? It's not just to check what is the state of the art. Is there another patent already in place? But also it could help you to provide information about the so-called freedom to use. That you say, if we develop a technology, and it's nice that you have a clear vision and you have a strategy and idea, but for some reason it might be blocked by other existing technologies. And then you might look for getting in contact with those people, for example, to discuss collaborations or licensing or cross-licensing, to any way to get around that existing technology, or even to build on existing technology something which has a specific added value. So it is a lot of information available in patent information on competing technologies, blocking technologies, and even collaboration opportunities. And you know that there are many search tools available, even free of charge, in order to get access to that knowledge. And I'm sure your TTO can help you. Also, there is the SD-Espacenet, which is offered free of charge by the European Patent Office. And I'm sure that's quite a very good starting point to get to know who is doing what in your specific field, besides the literature review. So now you know about what are the sources of information and what are the specific aspects I should look at: competing technology, competitors on the market, state of the art, are there patents, and then, of course, how to put it together. First of all, as I said, to gather the information about all the specific pieces, the bits and pieces, and then to check, is that relevant for me? Is that really, does that give me a hint about the strategic intelligence, whether that could support or hamper me in the exploitation of project results? And I'm sure you will easily get to that point that you say, okay, this is very valuable, and I will present it to the evaluators, that I know about competing technologies and know about competitors. But of course, I'm going to describe why my technology is better, why she is faster, why she is more reliable, why she is cheaper, why she is more adapted to the markets I'm looking at. So of course, but it's the wrong decision to say I'm not highlighting that there is technology, because there might be a situation that some of the evaluators know about that, or they have access to, of course, patent databases themselves, and they will say, sorry, I see that that was not, you didn't make a very, let's say, comprehensive search on that, so maybe you do not know about that, so how could I try in your plans and your strategies for exploitation? So it's good to mention it, and then, of course, to say why you are better, why you are more innovative. So that will help you to justify your objectives. So I would really, sometimes consortia are starting just to describe the objectives of their research from their pure research point of view. So it's better really to describe the objectives of your project in close relevance to the expected outcomes and their potential exploitation routes. And then to say, okay, that's exactly the point why we do that kind of research. Because we would like to get this kind of results and having this specific use for it. And then, of course, once you define your objectives based on evidence and information gathered from different sources, then you describe how you deliver it. How do you structure your project? What are your work plans? You have usually 5, 6 work packages dedicated to specific fields of interdisciplinary research work, bringing together the different academics, researchers you have in your project. And then you have usually one work package focusing on management of the project, and you have 1 or 2 work packages focusing on communication, dissemination, and exploitation. And that's it. So that's the structure of an Horizon project, a proposal. So, of course, and then the plan here is to describe how you are going to use the results. If you do not describe how your results are used at the end of the project or beyond the project, then it's very difficult to provide evidence that you have a clear impact on it. How to do it in the different parts. I was mentioning that there are 3 parts: excellence, implementation, and impact. So that's the structure of any Horizon 2020 proposals. In the excellence part, you see here, and some of them are new in Horizon, is you do not only describe your research to be done, but also what are the expected exploitation and impacts, to describe also how you lead or how you get from research results to the next innovative steps, and how you meet the expected impact in the call topic description. So it's not just to be described only in the impact part. Really make sure that you find a lot of cross-links between the different parts. We've seen many proposals in which researchers write the excellence part, and then the industry writes the impact part, and it's not linked to each other. It's really clear that the objectives formulated in the excellence are cross-linked to the expected impact in the other parts of the proposal. So I'm not going in detail to all of them, sorry. Where is it? Here. But of course, in the impact part, of course, also there are questions regarding barriers, obstacles, framework conditions. Here you may also refer to regulations. For example, if you work in life sciences or in the development of medical devices, then of course you have to see how to fit with such standards, regulations, how to get it approved, what is, so it's not just to describe the technology, but also the next steps really to get it validated and to get it used by customers later. There, in the proposal itself, there is now mandatory that there is a section about what are your plans for dissemination exploitation. That's why I mentioned before the differences between communication, exploitation, and dissemination. So it's not just really because I think it's very important. I think it's really why I know that, because I know that many scientists have difficulties to address that section in the proposal to say, okay, what could be a plan for the dissemination exploitation? So it's not clear. We start with doing research and we think that we have the same questions, but we don't have the same answers now. We don't know the answers. We have the questions. And how to put questions and potential answers and a plan for dissemination exploitation, that's definitely a challenge. So that's why we'll have a few more slides on that later. So please make sure that your plan on dissemination exploitation does not stop with the end of the project. Make sure that it really there could be a time to market, or there is definitely a need after the end of the project that your results are subject to further investments by private investors or whoever who is investing in your technology. I haven't seen project results in European funded projects which at the end of the project has been somehow absolutely 100% ready for market. So for example, we have been coordinating a project in FP7. It was terminated 4 years ago with a big industrial partner in the food sector, and it's only last week that we got aware that the big industry partner now has developed a product which is now available for consumers. It's for Alzheimer treatment. So it's really, and of course in drug development, that's not a drug in such, but in drug development, of course, the time scale is even more and more, and the scale of investment is, of course, much more than an Horizon 2020 project can finance. But of course, now we see that, particularly in health-related research, that clinical trials, phase 2, for example, can be financed by Horizon as well. So it's, of course, it can help really not just to develop research, but also to test and to validate research against the requirements of further use on the market. Implementation, that's another part in which innovation can be addressed by describing the management structures and procedures, including risk management and innovation management. I mentioned that earlier that, for example, you should have a partner responsible for innovation management. For example, the work package leader. For exploitation is, of course, the person who also is leading any activities to describe the plan for the use and the dissemination of results, or the dissemination plan or the exploitation plan. So allocate specific tasks to such people or specific whatever consultants, partners in the consortium who have some experience with that and knows how to do that. So it's not that the researcher have to be bothered with all that at the same extent. They should know about the needs and the requirements, but usually those people leading innovation management activities are from SMEs, industry, or having experiences in IP and innovation management from previous activities. So how does it look like, the plan for dissemination and exploitation of project results? It is key, and that's been mentioned by the European Commission many times, and I would say even now for the upcoming calls, there's even more emphasis put on that deliverable. If the results are not used, again, use could be commercial use, societal use, use for further research. The call challenges will not be addressed, and there will be no impact, and I'm sure your project or proposal is not going to be funded. So, but what can an H2020 project actually deliver? Most of the technologies developed in Horizon 2020 are still early stage. So it's more research results, IP knowledge, knowledge about manufacturing processes, or data which then has to be further analyzed, and it could be up to prototypes, to specific systems based on components developed in Horizon 2020, but it's not an innovation which is ready to use. But it has a lot of potential, and it has capacity to be used even beyond the expected impact of this specific project. And that's what has to be somehow packed into such a plan. And there is a draft plan. It's not more than, let's say, 1 to 2 pages in the proposal. But then, of course, this plan has to be revised and defined in detail during the project implementation. It's a dissemination and exploitation plan. It's not a dissemination plan and a different exploitation plan. So again, here, dissemination and exploitation are closely together. It's good. You don't get a customer to make use of your results if you don't ask the customer before. Or you have to do some dissemination efforts to get known of potential collaboration partners for licensing negotiations or for the uptake of results. Then, of course, then you have to describe what the potential partner would like to do with your results. We don't see that exploitation plans, and I think that's something we have then, of course, means that you describe the exploitation interests of the partners in the consortium. It is a description of any efforts taken by the consortium partners or with the help of external partners to get the results exploited. So that's, I think that's put here, that most project participants are not the innovators. They have been developing the results, but they look for innovators. They look for partners outside the consortium who help them to bring the results to market. So take-to-market partners must be found. And that's part of the dissemination. The communication is just to tell everybody what you're doing. Partners for exploitation might be found on scientific conferences. You go to places and you present the results. You have a poster, you have papers. And then you find partners who are investing with you in further research. Or if you look at commercial exploitation, then of course you have to go to brokerage fairs, like organized here, or you have to make use of the Enterprise Europe network or other initiatives which might help you really to get market exploitation partners on board. So again, the dissemination is therefore not usually planned for the consortium itself. You describe what all the partners are doing. That's only one part of it. But also how to find innovators and to what you would like to negotiate with potential uptakers of technology. What might be questions to be addressed in the dissemination exploitation plan? So what exactly is the offer you would like to make? So what is your IP? What is your knowledge? Protected or not protected? What is the ownership of the knowledge? Is it owned by the whole consortium or by selected consortium partners? What is the message? What would you like? How you're looking for? How do you sell your knowledge and get external partners attracted to your IP developed in the project? and under what terms and conditions you would like to make it accessible. Through licensing, or would you like to start new companies and you would like to get some shares on it, and so on. And who's going to manage and coordinate the IP? Because one of the biggest problems and barriers to exploit from collaborative research is that there is there's always a problem to see who is the person who is negotiating with external parties, if it is joint IP. And what we see more and more, for example, from UK partners, that if they see that there is a high value, commercial value in results generated in a collaborative research project, like in Horizon 2020, that they agree among the partners to start a new company, like an IP holding company, and then all the IP, all the knowledge from the consortium is managed by a single entity. Because otherwise it's a problem. I mean, if you say, okay, we have 6, 7, 8 universities working in the same, on the same technology and developing pieces and bits of it, and now whenever we negotiate with a partner who is looking at the technology and has an interest in exploitation, that we all of them have to bring to the table, and they have different views, and so I think that's difficult, and that would be difficult also for a partner to say, okay, I want to know to whom I'm speaking. I don't speak to 8 people with different mindsets. So then it's good to see that you agree that you have a new legal entity, or you have a kind of an interest group which then is negotiating on behalf of the 8 partners on terms and conditions for the use of research results. And then, of course, what is the route still to be done? Because, I mean, there is still a way to go. What might happen? What are the next steps to bring research results closer to the market? Again, what are potential barriers or even enablers, like regulation standards, IP, IPR, which can help or block further exploitation? And what is the level of further investment? Is it how far and how much investment is still necessary to bring it to market? If you look at the different exploitation strategies, the Commission simply wants you that you make up your minds about that. What are potential pathways for exploitation? There is no preferred route. The Commission says, we would like to see that you open new companies, you start new companies. This is something we like pretty much. So it's up to you to say, okay, what is the most, let's say, appropriate way? Most of them, it's not sale. See here, sorry. It's not that you really can sell results. That you say, okay, at the end of the project, there is somebody say, okay, then give me a price, and then I will buy it. So there is still much to be done. So usually it could be, let's say, the soft ways, like you use the results for teaching, you use the results for road mapping, for policy use, for further research, or more commercial oriented. You go for licensing out, for going into new knowledge transfer agreements for manufacturing, agreements for joint ventures with a long-term perspective. So those strategies are more, I would say, more appropriate and more relevant as a defined exploitation strategy for Horizon 2020 output. And that's more or less what the evaluators would expect from you. That you describe where do your information, which you describe in the proposal, comes from, how to put it together, to define a strategy, to define your objectives according to that, and then to select and choose the right exploitation strategy. To summarize, writing a proposal in Horizon 2020, driven by innovation, impact, exploitation, means that you have to address those questions in all 3 sections. Not to be left only for the impact section. Should make use of strategic intelligence by getting access to all relevant information from, let's say, patent search or market studies, or from information from the industrial partners involved in your proposal, and so on, so that you can justify the concept, the objectives, and methodology. Then you have a clear plan how to generate the results, the work plan with work packages, milestones, deliverables, and then you have a clear plan on how to make them used by the consortium partners itself, or by disseminate the results to selected stakeholders, partners outside the consortium, which might be pretty much interested in your results during the project lifetime or at the end or even beyond. So that's more or less the way to present not only the research of your project but also your plans about exploitation in a convincing way to the evaluators. At the very end, I would just like to present a few examples how to describe measures which you could include in your proposal, which we see as a kind of a, let's say, success cases in our proposals and also in the training with the European Commission. So, like I was mentioning to that, like patent information, and of course this is a tool in which then you can make them visible, like a SIEMSCAP, which means in which technology field are you operating? Are there any patents? Or if you do not look at patents, but also citations or literature review, so that you position your project according to information in the field. Because I mean, of course, it's your project, but also there are many other projects around. There's a lot of research done all over the world. And of course, the more you present about ongoing initiatives, other actors in the field, researchers or companies, which might be relevant for your research strategy or for your exploitation strategy, the more evidence have it that your proposal is based on a clear structured approach that you know to deliver not only research results but also to bring the results closer to exploitation. There are a number of tools. Some of them are free, others could be licensed. And something which then of course also should be described is that, say, okay, how to get known of the exploitation interests of the partners. So we usually work with questionnaires, we just send them. So, okay, what are your interests? Is there any contact with partners in the industry already? Do you operate on specific markets? Do you have a clue about other product services in the field which might be somehow competing? Are your results better? What is the innovative step? And so on. So there are a number of questions. I think that's really not cutting edge. That's something which can make use of. And then you get a view about the interests of the individual partners. And then having those questionnaires collected, analyzed, and then you organize an exploitation workshop. And then you collect those results presented by the partners, which they say, okay, those are, from our point of view, the results which are the key exploitable results generated from us in the project. And then you collect them and you discuss them in the consortium. You bring them together. You say, okay, how does that relate with your expected results? And we always notice that there has been not a lot of discussions about that so far. So really they were not aware of the expected results of others. So really we organize that kind of workshops. It's usually 1 or 2 hour somehow attached to a usual project meeting, but focusing only on expected results and their exploitation potential. And then at the end of the day, then you analyze them and then you get a very limited set of key exploitable results, because you cannot do an in-depth analysis of risks and exploitation opportunities for 10, 15, 20 results. So you have to bring that to a condensed number of key exploitable results, which then will be subject to what you describe in the dissemination exploitation plan. So that's a clear approach which has been approved in many Horizon projects so far and could be briefly described in your Horizon 2020 proposal. The Commission also initiated 2 innovation support actions going in the same direction. There is a so-called Common Exploitation Booster, which is for running projects an opportunity that you apply for help and support to the European Commission, and then they will send you an expert to a review meeting. So, okay, if we would like to have a review meeting more focusing on exploitation of results, then we could help you to get access to an expert. It's a service, and like a coaching service or a mentoring service, but you cannot address the expert by yourself, so you have to go back to your project officer in the Commission, and then they will apply for that. So that's in a pilot phase. So for the moment, 240 projects are supported by this service, and then they collect the feedback, and then we expect that there will be a new launch for services next year on that issue. And the same for the Innovation Radar, which goes in the direction to say, okay, what are the best innovators in Horizon 2020 projects, what are they doing, and to make them visible, and to give them specific access to fairs or brokerage events and so on. So you see the Commission now, and this is really very recent, so the Innovation Radar so far has only been implemented in ICT projects and in FET projects, and now it's going to be applied all over Horizon 2020 in the future. So it's really, you see the recent developments with regard to those aspects. And as we know that this is very complex, and I'm very happy that you have a lot of patience to follow my presentation on it. Just like to finish my presentation by the IP Help Services. As I mentioned, the IPR is a free of charge service offered by the Commission. It has a website with a lot of information on it. Whatever I was presenting, you will find that somehow on our website. We have a couple of fact sheets, guides on specific issues related to Horizon 2020 and or to IP and exploitation issues more generally. So all the formal aspects, the rules are documented in the pocket guide, but if you look for specific information about IP in biotechnology or in manufacturing, you can find that as well. We try to present information in a way that it is understandable for non-legal people like us, so that we understand it, and it's not, we do not serve for IP professionals or legal staff in general. So it's for researchers and in particular for small and medium-sized companies involved in Horizon 2020. And even more, there is a helpline. So there are legal experts. They are located in Luxembourg. And whenever you have questions regarding to IP in the framework of Horizon 2020, then you can address to the helpline, and they are going to answer to your questions within 3 days. Usually, you send an email in English, and then you get an answer to that. Or you can send us a draft from a consortium agreement, which you're about to negotiate with your partners, and you have questions regarding to IP, and then they can give you orientation. However, it's not legally binding. So it's not a legal service. We are not entitled to provide legally binding information. It's more giving your advisory services and guidance on that. And there is a training, and as today, but there are webinars. And if you feel encouraged to learn more about IP, IPR, exploitation related to Horizon 2020 or related to business activities, then you are invited to follow our webinars. You see here, those are the upcoming webinars for this year. And of course, there will be new webinars starting in 2018. However, as we have the experience that those webinars are booked off very rapidly, so I would strongly encourage you to register for our newsletter, because then you get the information about the webinars with a little bit in time advance, so that your chances are higher. However, I mean, we are constantly repeating those webinars in a way I'm sure you will get a place in it. If you would like to get an individual webinar for your institution, for your group, for your lab, whatever, then please get back to us as well. So that's also what we did. Of course, it should be at least 10 to 20 people, and then we can also organize a specific webinar on, for example, introduction to IP or introduction to IP in Horizon 2020 and so on. And we have an office in Brussels, and we are closely working with other IP organizations, and in Europe in particular, we're very happy to collaborate with our colleagues from National Contact Points and our colleagues from the Enterprise Europe Network, but of course also with the European patent offices and national patent offices as well. And we are not the only IP help desk supported by the European Commission. So we are the one for Horizon 2020 purposes. There are other help desks focusing on business relations with non-European territories. With, for example, there is a specific China help desk, Latin America help desk, and Southeast Asia help desk. So if you go to our website, then of course you will find them also, all the web links to those help desks as well. That's it. Thank you very much for your patience, audience, and I know it's a very tough topic, but really this was exactly more or less the presentation that we also gave to the European Commission and the evaluators. So it's really updated knowledge, and you can subscribe and underline to the point that this is a very hot topic at the moment. And it's not why I'm the IP help desk that I'm promoting this. It's really the Commission will evaluate the proposals and assess proposals much more under also the notion of how the results are really having an impact at the end. So that's really, we try to build bridges between the researchers and the expectations of the commissions, and hopefully I was successful to some extent.